Look at that. I almost did it again. I almost did it with the mute button again, guys. God, I need a bright red button on my screen as soon as I go live for that bright red button. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the September 16th, 2020 episode of the Cyber Insecurity stream. My name is Neil Bridges, and thank you for joining me today. And I'd like to say a special welcome to all of our new joiners as well as our regular visitors. As a reminder, every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, we stream from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. We are here to elevate that conversation around cybersecurity. Now, what does that mean exactly? We have a problem in our industry where we don't have real conversations about topics that affect our ability to secure people, data, and companies. Cybersecurity is an ever-changing landscape, and our goal here is really to focus on multiple aspects of the industry. You might hear teams like Red Teamer, Blue Teamer, and think that this is out of your league. It's not. We also discuss cyber risks, the impacts of the industry on our current landscape, and the art of the possible when dealing with today's cybersecurity issues. Now, whether you're an experienced veteran, whether you're new to the field, whether you barely know how to spell cyber, or you're somebody who was born in cyber, this stream is for you. And we are here for everyone to participate and learn in this community. And so with that in mind, we regularly try to have professionals from across the industry on stream. Tonight, I am super excited to be joined by my good friend Bill Nelson. I'll give his introduction on the next slide. We do have moderators in chat. These moderators are here to make sure that we keep chat, productive and to answer questions whenever we may not be able to answer them here on stream. We have myself here on stream. We also have our special guest here on stream to answer your questions. Your questions are incredibly important to us. I can't stress this enough. I can't stress how important your questions are to us. If you've been to some of our chats, if you've been to some of our streams, you've seen how lively chat can get. It is the prime value that comes with this stream being live. It's very, very rare that we get to have professionals like Bill or anybody else that we have on the stream here. And so make sure that you ask, them, myself, anybody, anything, anytime about any topic, whether it's, something that we're covering on stream, whether it's top of mind about security. I just heard that Bill does dad jokes, so maybe we can get some dad jokes back and forth inside a chat going on here. Either way, we'll do our best to address them, on stream as much as possible. We do broadcast via Twitch for our regularly scheduled broadcast, but you can find our videos either in the video section of Twitch or by viewing our YouTube channel. Make sure you do hit that follow button if you do like our content. Make sure you do turn those notifications on so you do get notified when we do get new content. We're here for you, the community, and we strive to bring you the most intriguing opinions, points of views, conversations in the cybersecurity industry with every stream. I did have some people send me some feedback, and you guys love the relevancy of it. That's very much why we do it, is we want to make it relevant to what you're dealing with in the industry today. We appreciate every single one of our followers. We appreciate every single one of our subscribers. If you are looking for one of those two options, make sure you hit either the follow or the subscribe button. We have had a couple people donate to the stream already. I want to make everybody aware that all donations, any and all donations that happen to the stream, we do send those immediately over to the Wounded Warrior Foundation. We thank all of our vets for their service and their sacrifice. And so if you would like to support the Wounded Warrior Foundation, you can do so directly, or you can head on over to our About page, and you can throw a donation over there, and we'll send that over to the Wounded Warrior Foundation for you. There's no obligation to do any of these, obviously. As you can see, we just continue to do these streams. We're going to continue to deliver this content to you. We're grateful for literally everybody who is here. And so with those logistics out of the way, let's talk about our schedule for tonight. So with all that being said, my guest for tonight is Mr. Bill Nelson. Everybody cheer for Mr. Bill Nelson over on this side of the screen. Bill is the co-founder of Identity Fusion. He has well over 20 years of experience inside the industry. Most of that is spent in the identity and access management discipline. We are lucky to have him. And Bill, on behalf of our audience, thank you very, very much for joining us. Can you take a few minutes to introduce yourself further?
Sure, absolutely. But first I want to find out who actually put something in chat that says that I tell very terrible jokes.
Bill tells terrible jokes. Look at there.
Yeah, so I definitely have to figure out who this person is and follow up. So if you can help me out with that.
No. That's one of the things that our channel provides, is a lot of anonymity for people to call you out.
Well, they actually probably know me quite well if that's the case. Um, so again, as Neil had mentioned, my name is Bill Nelson. I've been working in the security space for probably a little over 25 years. I stopped counting at 25 because anything beyond that just makes you sound old. And so I stopped at that point in time. Um, I kind of cut my teeth in the old days on X500, so basically directory services. And from directory services, I've kind of expanded off into other areas, user provisioning through provisioning tools, provisioning engines, and access management solutions. Work with vendors like Oracle and Microsoft and Sun and ForgeRock and Ping and SailPoint and a lot of these different guys that are out there. And so I kind of have my hands in a lot of different pies as far as the technologies are kind of concerned. Um, I guess, from my perspective, I got dragged into this industry because nobody else wanted to do it.
Wow.
We actually had a team of people that we were trying to go work on identity and access management. And what ended up happening was they couldn't find somebody who would take the lead on it. And so I volunteered. We had to learn how to build a services organization at the same time as we were trying to go figure out the technologies behind it. And that was about 20 years ago. And life has been very interesting, to say the least,
Wow.
ever since. So I can honestly say that security is a wonderful field to be in, only from the fact that you'll never get bored. The other thing is that you'll never have a lack for a job, because quite frankly, there's such a gap out there that we are trying to fill in this space, that we're looking for people to truly come up on this. And that's one of the reasons why we're offering, I guess, the giveaway that Neil will talk about later on, but as part of this program. So again, we're looking for really good people out there to kind of jump in and help us secure the net.
Well, thank you for that lead in, Bill, and I really do appreciate it. And tonight is going to be a very special night for one lucky viewer, and so I can't stress this enough that this is when Bill told me about this, I was absolutely floored by it. And I'm so thankful for you very much, Bill, for you and your organization for being able to offer this to our viewers. And so this is really going to be an amazing opportunity for somebody. And so Bill's company has developed a very special program that is very, very unique in the industry. And so, Bill, can you please talk just very, very briefly about your Iem Practitioner Program?
Sure. So the Iem Practitioner Program, the whole goal of this is to bring people into the security space and focus really on the identity and security domain. And so in this case, how do you take somebody that might have skills, baseline skills in Linux or networking or just in general, the basic skills, and how do you enable them to grow and learn in identity and access management? And so in the IAM space, you kind of have your three pillars. We call them the three legs of the IAM stool, with your access management, your provisioning services, and then your directory services, typically, is with anyone. And so what we've done is we've built three different tiers, actually, or two main tiers, and then a third that kind of is an underlying tier, to teach people all about identity access management. And so what we're doing is we've built a 12-week program with a 4-week internship as part of this, so that people can get a little bit of knowledge in certain areas, the introductory stuff, and then hands-on, in-depth knowledge on those items they need to go and looking to go do. And so we built this program. We ran our beta on it. I think it was in Q1 of this year. We had two of our corporate entities in it. They've loved it. We've gone back and fixed some of the things that, since it was a beta, we fixed some of the things that were associated with it. And now we're getting ready to roll out the second iteration of this. And that should be coming out either Q4 or early Q1 of this. And so long story short is it's our goal to enable people in access management solutions, knowing the methodologies, the best practices, the fingers on the keyboards kind of thing, and then the identity management practices as well, the same sort of scenarios. And that's what this program is all about.
Yeah, this sounds like just an amazing program. Hopefully everybody here is excited about this as I am. I'm very excited for this, Bill, and I thank you so very, very much. And so somebody who is watching this stream Actually, everybody who is on the stream right now, and everybody who will come on the stream later, right, is going to be eligible for this. This isn't gated behind followers or subscribers or anything like this. I think this opportunity is so phenomenal that I want everybody to have to be eligible for this. And so, before the stream ends, right, we will be giving away a scholarship to the Identity Fusion Iem Practitioner Program. It is contingent on you passing, their baseline exam. But other than that, I'm super excited for this. Bill, thank you very much for offering this to our viewers. And, with that being said, let's get into the news for today. It would not be a cyber insecurity news stream if I did not complain about yet another crappy fine. And here we go. And this will be the one of the time that I actually think somebody actually got the title really spot on for one of these notices. Dunkin Donuts hole in cybersecurity cost them $650,000 in fine. And while that is a very fantastic article, everything else about this story is absolute and utter garbage. In 2015, Dunkin Donuts failed to notify about 20,000 employees that their accounts have been targeted by hackers. The hackers had obviously hoped to gain access to, store value cards that ultimately led them to tens of thousands of dollars that were stolen from those customer cards. The chief communications officer at this company at Dunkin Donuts said that the New York Attorney General had no basis to charge them with this. Ultimately, come to find out, about 4 years later, 5 years later, they ended up settling the entire thing for about $650,000. I know I'm not a lawyer here. Bill's definitely not a lawyer here. We will have a lawyer next week on next week's stream. But my question for you, Bill, really is do you think that we give companies a pass by letting them settle instead of facing steeper consequences?
Absolutely. I mean, $650,000. I mean, in a lot of ways, you see a lot of these companies, and what they're doing is they're accepting the fines because it's a cheaper, way out than if they were trying to go ahead and implement the security controls in the first place. And so, to me, I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, it's a slap on the wrist for some of these companies that are doing this. 650 is nothing. I mean, it's crazy. I mean,
It is. It is, and when we look at this in comparison to their overall net value, right? I mean, they're a $6 billion company paying a $650,000 fine, and when you compare that to, we talked about Capital One on the stream a couple months ago. We talked about the Experian CEO a couple months ago with him getting away saying that social engineering, them being socially engineered out of their customer records wasn't necessarily a hack. Like, I thought. I'm being serious here. I thought GDPR and CCPA was really going to turn a curve for us in terms of holding businesses accountable. What happened?
I think we start getting into some of these regulations. What's ended up happening is they're still very slow in the adoption phase. So, I mean, California is doing some really good things, when it comes to GDPR or, the California Protection Act. But GDPR hasn't really funneled into the United States as much or as quickly as we'd like it to do. We're seeing some other states that are starting to come on board as far as looking at some of these regulations. And I think that the ultimate trend is that we as citizens need to continue pushing to have these cybersecurity controls in place. Protection of data, the trust, the privacy. I mean, quite frankly, it's really hard to take and turn the Titanic, because these organizations are so used to playing and going a certain way, having a certain set of rules, and trying to get them to move over and now starting to put control back in the hands of the users. It's very difficult because that mindset is just not there. And so you're having to totally change the whole thought process of these organizations. So I agree. I wish that we were closer. User-centric identity, privacy, trust, self-sovereign identity. These are all things that are my hot buttons that I wish that I guess some of these major companies would start taking more seriously.
But when you talk about putting things back in the hands of the consumer, how do we get consumers to take responsibility for their own cyber protections, if you will? Because I agree with you. I think that's one of the things we've talked about on the stream pretty consecutively, Chad. And keep me honest on this one. All of you who are out there who have been on the stream is, we have a problem that consumers don't and maybe it's not a consumer problem, maybe it's a company problem, where we've allowed banks to think for us, and we've allowed banks to send us new credit cards whenever they've detected fraud on our account and cancel that type of stuff out. How do we encourage a more consumer-centric mindset? How do we encourage 20,000 consumers in the case of Dunkin Donuts, to be really, really more upset about this, that it actually affects their shareholder price, which is, what seems to be the only thing the CEO and the board of directors care about?
I think it was Scott McNeely who once said that privacy is dead, get over it. And unfortunately, that's been a prominent thing across the board. The United States is very different than a lot of other countries. European countries have been looked at privacy a lot different than we have ever since the very beginning of time. And that's because their borders have been attacked. Our borders have not, for lack of a better word. We've had incidents, of course, but we've not. And so I think the United States in general has been living in complacency and has been very willing to delegate certain things over to different bodies that are considered more, I guess, kind of like your parents. You're trying to give them the rights to go control something. The problem is, though, that as we have more and more of these breaches, it's almost like anything else. You hear it so often that it becomes noise. And yeah, Dunkin' Donuts had an attack here, and Cap One had one before. We have a local company or a local healthcare organization here that just had a breach. I mean, there's all sorts of things that are happening, but we hear it so often. The news media is not covering these in depth. You'll see them on paper print, or you'll see them on the internet from time to time, but they're not really being covered on where most people get their news. And so I appreciate you bringing these types of topics up, because at least you'll have the ability to express this and get it out there. But quite frankly, most people either don't know about it or they don't know how to take control of their identities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as long as we make it very difficult, and difficult as it is today, you're never going to have the ability for somebody to go ahead and take that control. And I'll use one use case as an example about that. If you look at digital certificates, the X5 on digital certificates, once upon a time, the goal was to get everybody in the world a digital cert. But the problem was, how does grandma manage her digital certificate? She can't. And so if you don't make it where it fits into just the general course of doing business, people are going to resist. It's like every time we would see when an SL cert or SSL certificate would pop, expire or something, or it's not trusted, what's the first thing that you do? You click through it to get to the thing you want to get to. And so people just don't understand the need for privacy, the need for security, the need for safeguarding their own borders when they're in their own houses. And it's either because it's not being expressed through the news media, or it's they don't know how to. And it just is, it's too hard. And so privacy is dead. Just get over it.
So I'm going to ask you a cynical question on that, because you talk about grandma and you talk about SSL certs, and I think we've done this as an industry. We've done this in corporations, right? Where if you stand up an internal CA, certificate authority, but then you issue out self-signed certs to all your VMware infrastructure or RDP servers or things like that, you're really just encouraging your internal users to click through certs anyway, right? Nobody really cares. But that's an easy argument to make. But kind of slightly more controversial is we make our kids get licenses to drive a 3,000 pound vehicle 70 miles an hour on the highway. Why aren't we making people get licenses to get out on the internet?
Because the internet's free. If you think about what started the internet in the first place, it was mainly for a communication mechanism. And then all of a sudden, this Netscape browser, actually it was before Netscape browser, you had the Mozilla browser came out.
At least you didn't say link.
Yeah, well, that wasn't pretty. Okay, you couldn't sit there and look at graphics and stuff. So, but when you start looking at this, now all of a sudden, the internet turned into not an information source, or at least because I look at what's going on the internet, I don't consider much of it information. It's nonsensical information. But what ends up happening is marketing companies started getting involved. Even with infotainment in the news media started getting involved. We're not getting pure raw data anymore. And so they want you on there to get the clicks. They don't care. What's the danger in this case here? What's the danger for you and somebody else? In a car, I can run somebody over. Mm-hmm. And the internet, the worst I can do is say something stupid, and people either laugh at me, or all of a sudden I have about 10,000 new followers for this new thing I just came up with. So to me, I think the internet has been thought of more as benign The internet has become more of a right, not in this case here. Everyone should be on the internet, and you know why not? Let's get everyone on in iPads when they're 5 years old, and just keep going from there. It's just part of what we've become, and so I think that that when it comes to just in general around the internet itself, I don't think licenses will ever become a thing.
Yeah.
Just like I don't think, walking down the street, you're going to have a license unless we get into an oppressive society where we have to have our papers being shown everywhere.
Let's not go there. Let's not go there. Yeah. So there is a statement in chat that I do want you to comment on. So Vordar in chat says, and this is back to Dunkin Donuts, right? And the cybersecurity issue here faced with Dunkin Donuts says, the parent company itself is at fault, but how much of any blame / responsibility comes down at the franchisee? And I've got experience with this because I did a pen test for a box company that does have franchise office locations, and when we went in there to try to do a pen test and a red team in their organization, they were like, well, actually we feel pretty secure and we really don't care about our franchisees and their security whatsoever. So you got any comment on that when it comes to how that blame gets split between, say, the parent company and the franchisee?
Yeah, so I guess I have a probably more of a personal opinion, and then there's probably some sort of legal opinion that goes along with this. Yeah, to me, I mean, as a franchisee, I'm buying services from an entity that I'm trusting, and they are providing me my services. And I'm diligently paying my franchise fee to that entity to go ahead and have those services. If a hack occurs on my side of the fence, then I'm fully responsible for that hack, for not safeguarding what it was that I was supposed to safeguard. But if the hack actually happens at the mothership, then I don't believe personally that should flow down to the end users themselves. I think that should be fully in the responsibility of the mothership, not in the actual franchisees.
But with that in mind, I mean, how do you improve that relationship then that exists? Because, I don't imagine that cybersecurity services are necessarily offered as part of your franchise fee between, that mothership and those downstream franchises.
Well, I guess it depends on what kind of franchise you're referring to. So in a lot of cases, you're buying an entire everything, like a McDonald's franchise, you're buying everything from them. You're getting the system, you're getting the products, you're getting, you basically find the location and they have to approve it. But basically everything kind of funnels down from top to bottom in that case. Mm-hmm. Now you don't have a data center. You don't have your own, I mean, you're basically, OEMing McDonald's, everything, point of sale, everything from these guys. In that particular case, the only way, if you had something happen locally, and so again, if it was one of my employees that they went through the receipts and they stole credit card information for our customers, then absolutely I should be liable for that particular type of scenario. Mm-hmm. But an overall hack that actually flies down to all franchises should not be the responsibility of the franchises.
Looks like Muncher in chat says, I worked at an MSP that did mostly franchise PCI firewalls, and it's a shit show. Yeah. I think that's kind of agreed upon, because I mean your PCI, even the payment card things, those aren't provided by the franchise, by the mothership in most cases, are they? It's franchisee that's required to get those.
I think it goes on both sides. So sometimes they will provide a central location for this, but in a lot of cases they don't. So it is because all the transactions are being handled there, and then they just pay their money to the franchise. Again, it really comes down to where is the culpability, and it kind of even goes into healthcare. So you look at healthcare and how you have the different organizations just with compliance there. So, and you have these loosely coupled relationships where hospitals have to use payment processors, which also use entities that will do transcription of doctors' notes into electronic records and so forth. And everyone in that case shares a piece of responsibility. But if it's the transcriber that gets hacked, ultimately what ended up happening is there's some culpability to the main entity because they're the name. Mm-hmm. If you're going in our litigious society that we're in, did I just lock up?
No, you're good. Well, okay. No, you're good. You're good. I'm still listening to you. Yeah,
I saw myself stop there for a second. I must have locked up.
No.
Tyler, I guess I know who Tyler is on here, but you've seen me lock up several times here. But in some cases, we would have situations where that would need to flow upstream, because who's going to go after a particular store or franchise or a certain business they're going to go after the big name, and they're going to try and get everything they can.
Well, yeah,
So
they want the logo on the lawsuit.
they do want the logo on the lawsuit, and that's where I think that unfortunately we battle the again. Now here goes another personal opinion. We battle with what is right and what is monetizable. If you can go win a lawsuit and make a lot of money off that lawsuit, it doesn't mean that you have fought for your rights. It just means that somebody either paid it off, or somebody's, just like in the case of Dunkin Donuts, it was easier to pay a $650,000 fine over several years of going through this, instead of actually putting the controls in place and having to go deal with it from that perspective. It's a slap in the wrist. So it's easier to pay somebody off when you get into legal than it is to actually, fight the thing through and what's right and wrong. And I actually had a judge tell me one time, when you start looking at two parties in a legal lawsuit, there's right, there's wrong, and then there's going to be somewhere in between there that you're going to fall in. And so there's never just black or white. And that's, it's unfortunate that we in the United States have gotten to this point where these lawsuits, and I'll call them frivolous in a lot of ways, these lawsuits are really what's dictating, I guess, some of our decisions.
Well, but do you make the distinction between a lawsuit versus, somebody being held to a regulation like GDPR, right? So if we look at like Marriott and British Airways, like, they were held to they were being called to court for their GDPR violation, but then you've got others where you've got privacy groups that brought Oracle to court and sued them for their privacy regulation. Do you make the distinction between somebody like GDPR who's logistically trying to go after somebody because of a legitimate GDPR fine? Do you make that distinction between somebody like that and somebody who's like a privacy group that's saying, well, we hate Oracle, so we're going to sue Oracle for their privacy violations?
You mentioned Oracle. All I'm thinking is the great Satan, right? With Oracle.
They just bought TikTok. Or not bought. I guess they partnered with TikTok. I guess
they partnered with TikTok. Microsoft decided to go ahead and step away from that one. But yeah, I think that in the cases of, there's certain companies that you love to hate, and they're usually the ones that have gotten so big or have such a reputation that you'd love to see them knocked off their pedestal. And again, as Americans, we'd like to root for the underdog more times than not. And Oracle is definitely not the underdog. So it's sad, but I don't necessarily agree with, I'm not referring to the specific suit you're referring to, but I don't agree that somebody should have the right to go after somebody like that. And I don't sit there and look at it as good for you. We took a bite out of Oracle's ass. I don't like going after that, because that's the wrong approach. What I do agree with, however, if we can have enough teeth in legislation where if GDPR, if we would accept the constraints, if we would accept the rules, the fines, the laws, and we're only just now starting to see fines come out of GDPR. And I do see that we are going to start seeing more and more of those. Hey, if anything, it's a revenue stream for somebody. So we are going to start seeing more and more of those. It's just that, unfortunately, it's taken some time to get through it. And even so with GDPR, there's enough gray areas in there where you still have to go back and forth to figure out, is this really an issue or is this really not? Is this something that they're culpable for or not? And so it's not something that is a quick and down and dirty kind of thing.
So you mentioned the fines coming out of GDPR, and this is kind of one of those tangents I warned you that we'd get down on if we weren't careful, right? Because I think there's a fine line when we look at like the Marriott and the British Airways GDPR, and this is the reason this is relevant to this news article for those who are listening is GDPR was first, and we were all, at least most of us who were in some of the big fours and from the cybersecurity community, we were very excited for GDPR because 15% of a lot of companies' revenue, we're literally talking about billions of dollars. And when we talk about it, it's like we've got to hit these companies in the wallet if we want them to change some of their ideas around security. But I bring that up to say, you talk about some of the fines coming out of GDPR, but then we start to see some of the loopholes where they're going to the UK because the UK has less stringent GDPR, fines than say EU proper. And so we've talked about this on the stream a couple of different times is, it's starting to look like we're going to merge between what's happening in the US with something like Dunkin Donuts, where we're allowing them to get away with $650,000, where we're letting, not Bank of America, Capital One get away with an $80 million fine. We're going to water down those regulations so bad, and not be able to, keep our guts about us, if you will, when it comes to making sure that these companies are being held, financially, responsible.
Yeah. So even before GDPR, though, when you had Privacy Shield, for instance,
That's an old one.
There were these attempts to secure people's data and to basically put to make the citizens feel good about the information they're sharing. When you start putting these, I guess the constraints, when you start putting the rules, the regulations on and together and create these, the legislation, unfortunately, you have to have somebody, number one, the watchdogs. Number two, you have to have the teeth in it, and the teeth are not being, used, quite frankly. And then you're always going to have the politics. So there's no pure separation between the regulations and the politics that go with them. A good example, like you said, is you're talking about we go after Oracle, but we don't necessarily go after Marriott. Well, unfortunately, it wasn't Marriott; it was Starwood in that case. But still, so unfortunately, Marriott buys Starwood, and hey, congratulations, here's a breach. And unfortunately, that's one of my customers, and I'm sitting. I didn't safeguard them guys.
I was gonna say, I was like, wait a minute, hold on, who let this guy on the show?
No. This was totally different on that one. So I didn't build their infrastructure for security, but Marriott was one of our customers, and I'm one of their customers. I've been with Marriott for years, and so when I heard what was going on, I started looking at Starwood and all this, and going, well, I stayed at Starwood twice. Is that going to really hit me? And yeah, I'm sure it would. But we look at these guys, and I don't know if it's, again, I don't know if somebody is taking a different stance by looking at a Marriott, and Marriott's one of those companies we like. Oracle's not one of those companies we like. So let's go after Marriott because we like them. They're nice. They have hotels. We stay at hotels. They have nice bedding. Have you tried the very soft bedding inside of Marriott's? They're wonderful.
I'm just glad you didn't say, have you tried the Marriott bedding that's at the Macy's department store?
No. So I sound like I'm an advertisement for Marriott. Maybe I get some, something here, maybe extra points or something. But Oracle is not quite the same. It's not that warm, fuzzy, friendly kind of entity that we all nuzzle up to. So I think that it becomes down to public opinion. And a lot of times, if there's going to be an outcry on something, which kind of goes back to what I said before, if you have an outcry and the public can actually push it, then you might start seeing some of these issues starting to funnel down to a lot more of these entities. But the public doesn't know about half them. Now, like I said, we had a breach here with a cancer society in Tampa Bay, and you know what? The employees don't even know it happened. I just happened to fall upon this, and so most of even our area doesn't know. But we had 4,000, not a big number, but when you look at the local community, 4,000 people that their healthcare data has now been exposed. And the amount of value associated with a healthcare breach is way higher than the amount, from a hacker's perspective of financial. Financial has a very short lifetime, but healthcare, oh yeah, it goes on forever. So, I mean, quite frankly, I don't think there's enough of an outcry, going back to your original point in this. I don't think there's enough of an outcry from us as citizens to drive this, at least in the United States. Canada, a little bit better with the Privacy Acts up in Canada, a little bit more over in the European Union to some degree. But we're just now getting into, I think the last couple of years, 2-3 years, we're just now starting to understand about privacy and security and trust and so forth. It's just not prevalent. It's not part of our own DNA yet.
There's a couple really good questions that I want to hit in chat, but before we do, just because you mentioned, not even the employees being aware of a data privacy or a breach or something like that, we've heard tell, since things like the Target breach and the Home Depot breach and even the Anthem breach way back, a few years ago, we've heard tell of stronger government regulations, when it comes to mandating the disclosure of breaches. And we've even seen as recently as Garmin, and we talked about this on stream, where Garmin paid some dollar amount for, a decryptor for their ransomware incident. Without getting political, do you think that we need more, call it regulation, call it federal intervention, whatever you want to call it? Do you think that we need to lower the standards in which we mandate companies disclose, some type of cybersecurity incident?
That's a very, I have to be careful in how I respond to that. You don't want to get into politics, neither
No,
do I.
we don't want to get into politics.
So in our business, I would like to see, well, sorry, I'll start off as a customer. As a customer, I would rather see, or I'd like to see more oversight. But I also understand that oversight in and of itself can overstep.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a fine balance between the two. To me, I mean, when I found out how long it took for even Dunkin Donuts to go ahead and kind of fess up to some degree, or even some of the other guys, how long, once upon a time on our breach, we had a certain amount of time. I mean, mandated that you had to notify your customers once you knew, who were attacked, or if anything, all your customers. But you had to publish it, you had to notify it, you had to put safeguards in place, you had to talk about, what your mitigation efforts were going to be and what your remediation efforts are going to be going forward. There's all these things that we were supposed to go do as a business organization to go ahead and handle or react to the breach. But the problem is, it's not, I mean, again, going back to Dunkin Donuts, you know what? For me to go through that, it's almost like I'd rather get caught. Later, if I get by with it, nobody knows about it. Nobody knows about it. But if I get caught with it and get slapped with a fine, then maybe I'll deal with the reputation at that point in time. And as Americans, we have a very short lifespan with reputation, or at least with attention.
Mm-hmm.
So Dunkin Donuts, maybe right now because it's on our screen and we're all going, oh, gasp. But at the same time, we're still going to go get our pumpkin spice latte, from them tomorrow because hey, it's October's coming. We got to get got to get this stuff. So I think I'd like to see as a consumer, I would like to see organizations or companies live up to what they're supposed to be doing. But if not, then I do think they need to have more oversight and regulation.
Yeah. Let's hit chat for a little bit. I see Shamu Khan's in chat. Welcome to the stream, Shamu Khan. Glad to see you back again. This headline with a not like this emoji. I love the emoji. That's a good one. Yeah, this headline we had to bring this one up because it's probably one of the funniest ones we've seen ever. Therson says, depends on the company, I guess. Didn't Uber have to pay a lot for their cover-up? Well, slightly different. It was a cover-up, and there was a lot more that was going on there than that meets the eye.
Actually, Neil, I want to make one very important point here.
Go for it.
Because somebody called me out on pumpkin spice latte. I just want to be very clear on this. I know it's Starbucks, but Dunkin Donuts also has a pumpkin spice latte. I'm just saying. Okay? And theirs is better than Starbucks. Okay.
Oh my God, we're gonna start the pumpkin spice fights. Hold on.
Theirs comes out before Starbucks does too.
Hold on. We have got to do a new poll here on pumpkin spice. Hold on. We got to do a pumpkin spice poll. Pumpkin.
I just saw Krispy Kreme come across. Now that's donut crack right there.
All right, we're doing a poll. Everybody pay attention. Pumpkin spice, yes or no? It's going to be a 10-minute poll. We're going to allow all sorts of bits and Planet Hacker scores to go along with this poll. So pumpkin spice, yes or no? Go after it in the poll if you want it. Let's see what else we got here for questions. Yes, we are going to do a pumpkin spice poll. Looks like we got all right. So Afraz29. This one looks like it's going to be over to you, Bill. Had a conversation with a company that is on-prem, doesn't believe cloud is safe, and isn't worth the cost. I obviously came up with many reasons, but he also said that part of healthcare will never need to be in the cloud. So the question is, do you think SMBs in healthcare, like outsourcing nurse aides and outsourcing patient care, have to switch from paper to electronic for audits and for storage the way they need to now keep paper files for 7 years? It's a little bit of a long one.
So if the question is, do we have to move to electronics for healthcare records, the answer is absolutely yes. that is part of the direction that it's not been completely and totally mandated yet. They've kind of allowed the timelines to slip in certain areas, but medical healthcare records in the United States need to go into electronic format. We actually, prior to starting Identity Fusion, I worked with a company that did nothing but electronic healthcare records. And our whole goal was to go ahead and take the paper copies that were in doctors' offices or that were in patients' hands and convert them into EMRs because they had to. We had to get them into electronic format so that we could, part of it, put it in the hands of the individuals so they had control over them, but also put them in the hands of other entities. If I wanted to go transfer from one physician to the other, I'd like to give them the entire healthcare record. So it's something we worked on for 2 or 3 years before I chose to move off into this area space. So if it's the electronic healthcare records, yes. Cloud, you're asking somebody who's a cloud bigot, personally. It used to be companies would start, you would have a startup company. We used to call it 2 developers in a pizza box. And that was basically a reference to Sun Microsystem pizza boxes, the old U2 Sun boxes. And so you'd always have 2 developers in a garage with a pizza box, building the next greatest thing. Well, nowadays it's no longer 2 developers in a pizza box. It's 2 developers and an Amazon instance. The cost structure and the entry point is so much cheaper at this point to get started. And so my entire company is built on the cloud. Our back office, everything we have is built in the cloud. So the cloud itself can be very secure. I mean, if you look at government, state and local government, federal government has moved into the cloud. And so it is a secure fashion. Now you have to take extra controls to make it happen. But yeah, I'm a firm believer in the cloud in and of itself. Does everything need to go in the cloud? No, I don't think everything does. But when you start looking at the costs of cloud, it is actually cheaper than on-prem. And I would guess that the person you were talking to that was talking about on-prem was probably cheaper than cloud. Probably hasn't upgraded their servers or done anything with them probably for several years. Because on-prem is definitely, when you start putting in the total cost of ownership from electricity and it depends on your data center, of course, and then the size of the company. When you start doing the TCO, the cloud is actually a lot cheaper.
So Muncher kind of follows up with that, Bill, since you're on that cloud kick. Muncher says, cloud is a force multiplier for both good and ill. You can make some very bad choices with security in the cloud. What are some of the things that you've seen people do? What's some of the edge cases, right, of things that you've seen people do right and wrong when moving to the cloud?
I think from a moving to the cloud perspective, the number one issue that I think that I've seen is the total advocation of responsibility to a third-party provider. When we sit there and say that, okay, Amazon or Azure or Oracle or Google or whoever's cloud, IBM that you're using, when they're going to take responsibility for my security, that immediately is just, excuse me, but that's a dumbass, kind of statement. Because you can't, as the owner of a company or as a board of directors or as whoever is running the company, and whose legal responsibility is to make sure things are safe and secure, you can't delegate that risk or delegate that responsibility to somebody else. It's your responsibility ultimately. Now, when you start looking at cloud, there's no difference between trying to secure something in the cloud as on-prem, except for you don't have to maintain it. And yeah, there are going to be some extra costs in there if you want dedicated this and there are some additional costs in those capabilities. But if you're truly going into a cloud type environment, you still have to deal with MFA. You want to have secure access into certain things. You still have to have VPNs into your clouds. You still have to make sure that your instances that you're setting up, wherever you're setting them up, aren't left open, and so you disable all the services there, just like you would on a server in the DMZ. So you treat it as if it were in on-prem or and you're trying to fend off hackers, or if it were in the DMZ. You can't just look at it and go, oh yeah, okay, it's easy to spin up a new instance. Hey, look, I can just run a web server automatically out of the box. That's a bad thing. So yeah, and you still have some of those the capabilities.
So you bring up kind of that deference of liability, and one of the things that we've had several people comment when we've talked about like the Experian breach in South Africa and things like that is that it's all about deference of liability. So you think that it's a misnomer that you can, or a fallacy that you can defer your liability for some of your cloud security mistakes to the cloud service providers?
Absolutely. So I mean, if you try to call Amazon up and you try and ask them, "Oops, I had a data breach. It's your fault." They're going to go, "Sorry, we didn't set up your instance. We just gave you the infrastructure and the tools to go set up your own." So, if you didn't know how to set up your AZs properly, it's your fault, quite frankly. And unfortunately, you're seeing well, I haven't seen, quite frankly, that level of I guess finger pointing yet. I'm sure it's out there,
Mm-hmm.
but where you are seeing this, I mean, if you look at some of the what I would consider some of the more private areas, the federal government has moved to the cloud. There's some very strong relationships with Amazon. When you start looking at financial has been dragging its feet for the longest time, and they've been testing the waters. Can we put some of our stuff in the cloud, or should we not? And financial has probably some of the biggest liabilities associated with that due to financial loss. But they're moving towards it. I mean, Cap One, is completely in the cloud. So I'm not going to say anything about Cap One because I know some things about Cap One, but they are completely in the cloud. And so, the cost savings that they have incurred by going that route have been astronomical, right? But they've had to. And I can tell you right now that the teams I've worked out with out of Cap One, they have teams of people that are working on just the identity and infrastructure side of the house, 20, 30 people on their team, safeguarding the identities in their network, right?
But where was that diligence pre-breach?
It's like anything else. I think you had when you start looking at some of the only secure computer is one that's not plugged in, quite frankly.
We've said that before. Yes, very much so.
That's just your old mantra on this one. Even cybersecurity companies themselves are going to be subject to hacks. And I'm not going to say that Cap One, in their case, if it was something that they did or didn't do, they could have known about it ahead of time. Yes, I think that any company, if you have a crystal ball, can try to go and do everything. But even security itself is a cost risk kind of thing. It's like buying insurance. Every one of us wants to insure our house and our car and everything else for replacement costs. But when we get that sticker from the insurance company that says, "Here's how much it's going to cost for replacement value," we go, "Ooh, maybe not so much. Maybe I'll take a risk on this." And I think a lot of times you have situations like that with some large companies out there. They know what they need to do, but sometimes they don't do it because of either A, it's on the roadmap, or B, and they haven't gotten to do it yet because there's other things we had to do first. We're limited on resources, or B, it's not cost effective yet.
So I want to kind of go a different direction based on something you said, and this is more kind of around your cloud service provider comment that you made earlier, and you seem to have a pretty strong opinion on this, which is why I want to ask you about it. I've worked, I've led, security operations teams and whatnot, where we've had massive relationships with a lot of the cloud service providers, Azure and AWS and things like that. And I've helped negotiate a lot of those cloud service agreements with some of those big, big box cloud service providers and whatnot. And it's funny you talk about how, like, if you have a breach as an organization, you go to Amazon and say, "Well, I want to hold you liable for the breach." Amazon tells you to go pound sand and get out of here with that. But one of the things that I've seen when negotiating some of those cloud contracts as well, with even some of the larger Fortune 100, Fortune 50 companies, is if you try to go to them and say, "Well, look, if you have a breach or if you detect a cybersecurity incident, especially if it affects my infrastructure, then I want to be known about it within a reasonable SLA." And they also tell you to go pound sand as part of that. And so do you think there's a little bit of hypocrisy that goes on there between some of these cloud service providers, where the lack of transparency defers literally all of their liability now over to you too, because now you're not aware of some of their security, things that could affect your environment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, to me, I mean, again, there is a certain liability, or at least there's a certain exposure within the cloud providers themselves. You don't know who is maintaining those servers. I mean, I know that there's, a lot of these guys are supposed to be. I don't even know what I guess the compliance or the regulations are. It used to be SAS 70, now it's probably ISO 9020 or something like that. But quite frankly, a lot of these organizations are supposed to live up to certain controls and how their employees access both physical and logical, or in this case, virtual type assets. But you can't you can't avoid that rogue person who gets in there and does something wrong, or that somehow he accidentally leaves something open. I think I saw a comment here with Cap One about the firewall being left open. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, humans, as long as we're in the equation, we're going to be introducing human error. Sorry, that sucks to be us, because we get tired, we forget things. You can't have documentation on everything, and so that's where you have to try to put as many computer controls in place as you possibly can, and try to train and educate and so forth your employees to do the right thing, and then still try to follow processes. But I worked with AT&T for 10 years. As many of the processes we put in place, or the controls we tried to put in place, ultimately there's a breakdown somewhere in that line. Either we become too complacent, or we just something is no longer stressed because something else became more important, quite frankly. So I do think that there is some, I guess, hypocrisy when it doesn't flow down, and they don't have to notify us.
Mm-hmm.
They should, just like the companies that, quite frankly, that we as customers, I mean, because we're talking about a consumer supplier relationship here. If I'm a consumer of company XYZ and they have a breach, I want to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a consumer of Amazon or Azure or anybody else, and they have a breach or something happens there, I want to know about it, because I want to know what my exposure is on that system.
And while I'm not an anti-clouder by any stretch of the imagination, from my perspective, when I think about looking at cloud from a security perspective, across the entire organization, I think that's my one and only not residence, kind of a reticence. There we go. That I've got with some of these cloud service providers is that the lack of transparency they have when communicating with me.
Right.
It's really just, hey, trust me with everything you've got, but I'm not going to have any of that transparency back to you.
So I'll give you one more example in the cloud, and then I guess we can put a nail in this coffin. But I mean, the try. I'm a big company, not me personally, but I mean the companies I work with are big companies. So I'm putting myself in that metaphorical. I'm a big company. I'm a large Fortune 500 or Fortune 100 financial organization, or I'm a automotive manufacturer that is moving to the cloud, or I'm a whatever it might be. What I'm finding, and what I have found, it's been my experience, is that Amazon will give you the tools, but they won't give you the expertise. You have to get their consulting services as part of this, obviously. But what I find is a lot of these entities, these companies that move to the cloud, don't know that they can get Amazon professional services to help out with things. And so they're scrambling out there to go hire some guy that's got a badge that says that he's Amazon certified,
Mm-hmm.
and they bring him on board, and he's going to go set up a Kubernetes deployment in architecture, or he's going to go set up some Terraform scripts or whatever it might be to go do everything. And oops, they've left themselves open because they didn't have an audit, or they didn't know what they were doing, or just they had a guy that just got a badge. And so what I have found is Amazon, I think, should be more proactive into reaching out to and partnering with these large organizations, not just Amazon in general, but any of these guys, because they give us the infrastructure, but they almost don't give us the time of day beyond that.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Okay, let's hit chat for a couple more. We kind of glossed over a couple other ones. I want to back up on chat a little bit here. Afres says, "I wish every company that had misconfiguration breach had to disclose how it happened." I couldn't agree more, Bill. I don't know if you want to chime in on that one at all. I think we beat that one up pretty.
Even if I would love to know from the company perspective if it's going to affect me, but I would love to also see these misconfiguration breaches, even if it's posted anonymously, so other people can learn from it.
Absolutely. The target breach was we continue to beat up the target breach because we have a court document, that tells us exactly how that happened. Like, we need more of that.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where, to me, I mean, it's fun. It's fun in a malicious sort of way to read these things because you sit there and go, "Oh my God, how stupid can you be?" But at the same time, you're going, "Oh, gee, I guess I could be guilty of that too if I'm not careful." So it is fun to learn from other people's mistakes as long as you actually take some action based on those mistakes of others.
I think I guess I'm only slightly less cynical on that one, where instead of it's oh my God, how stupid could these people be, is I want to take them and I want to take these reports and I want to run to the board or to the CIO or whatever the case is, and I want to be like, see, it can happen to us.
We're doing this.
That's right.
These guys,
Let's see what else we got here. Oversight only drives a company. This gets back to our oversight conversation. Muncher says, oversight only drives a company to reach the bare minimums. You have to make them disclose so their brand is on the line.
Yeah, and that's what, I think, it used to be where when Sarbanes-Oxley first came out, there was basically threats of jail time associated with SOX, right? To me, I mean, the teeth that are in a lot of these things, really it's reputation. And like I said, even with reputation, as Americans, we're very short-sighted. We have a very short attention span. So to me, I mean, I would like to find something that, if there's some sort of true negligence, somebody knew better and they didn't, I think that carries a different weight than somebody, and I know that, I guess, what do they call it? That, ignorance is no excuse. But I mean, there are cases where, there's knowledge and completely disregard of what it is versus the ignorance aspect of it. So I think that there should be maybe two levels or multiple levels of, I guess, culpability regarding some of these things.
Okay. Cloud is a force multiplier we hit that one already. Bonus points for using force multiplier. Somebody's calling you out for your joint doctrine there. Somebody recognizes the military lingo. Trust policies that have lambda star. Muncher says companies really struggle with IAM in the cloud. Agree, disagree, since both of those are your space.
No, absolutely. Totally, absolutely. But you know what's interesting? We've implemented cloud-based. I think most of our companies are moving towards the cloud as far as IAM solutions. And so all of our partners, we've either built in Google, Amazon, or Azure, probably almost completely. I think the last customer I worked with that wasn't in the cloud was probably about 6 years ago. So every other IAM implementation that we've done has been in the cloud. And really where it comes from is the amount of discomfort, is, hey, we're moving a security, piece of our infrastructure into an area that, is going to be ripe for attack. And you're right. But if you put the right controls in place, then it's a relatively safe thing to go do. But yeah, the other thing is certain products. If you look at the actual IAM products that are out there, some of them are more cloud ready than others. Some of them naturally fit in a on-prem infrastructure because of the way that they were architected and built, and others fit very nicely in a cloud-based environment. And so, like I said, I think in the last 6 years, we've been doing nothing but cloud-based IAM implementations.
Nice. So looks like Muncher's going to be our top chatter for the night. Looks like he's got another one here. The cost for a large org to change their apps to be cloud compatible is really high. It's the same argument for why banks still have mainframes.
Yeah.
You agree with that? I take it.
I do, but again, there's ways around it, and I know that some of them are going to be popular ways and some are going to be unpopular ways. It's just like trying to take, I guess, a legacy-based application and try to make it I am ready. And it's not out of the box because all it does is basic auth at, the command line or at the app itself. So there are ways you can put wrappers around things and reverse proxies and all sorts of fun stuff you can kind of wrap around these guys. And again, I'm not talking about all conditions. Like I said, this could be popular, it could be unpopular. But in general, I think I think that you can move them, but if you choose to re-architect something for the cloud, there is a major cost associated with it. Sometimes it's easier just to throw out the app altogether.
Okay. So I saw something in I saw something pop up in chat, and I intentionally didn't bring it up because I wanted to pull it back because we are actually kind of going to talk about it in a fashion. Yeah, we kind of this has been kind of hit or miss. We saw this kind of pop up in the news a couple of days ago where secretive Pentagon research program looks to replace human hackers with AI, and so a lot of the conversation that's kind of gone on in chat is talking about human error, and you mentioned it yourself a little bit there, Bill, and then here we go. We've got this program here where the Joint Operations Center inside of Fort Meade, through their Project Ike is really trying to track the keystrokes made by over 200 of their cyber war fighters, where it automatically runs strings of programs, adjusts it constantly, absorbs information. Dude, I just can't. I mean, we did a poll several streams ago that talked about the greatest hacker movie alive, and unfortunately, the 1983 film War Games did not make the top of the list. But as I'm reading through this, all I hear is Whopper from War Games, going off in my head. I mean, what worries some experts is that, this artificial intelligence that they're trying to build into this, and I think this is what kind of the, chat was getting at when they were talking about automation and things like that, right, is that they don't always act predictably, and that these glitches could put lives at risk. Kind of I know it's a broad topic, but do you think we're ready to entertain AI in the realm of controlling our cyber weapons or, any of our offensive or counteroffensive maneuvers? Is this how Skynet happens?
Absolutely. If we could have done this in 1983, why not now? I mean, come on, seriously. Welcome, Dr. Faulkner or Walkner, whatever his name was. Shall we play a game? It's funny you mentioned that because that's one of my favorite movies with Matthew Broderick. So that's when he was before he was pre Ferris Bueller at that point in time. So he's doing some definitely iconic roles. So to me, the AI, and what's funny, I look at sorry, I'm extremely jaded when it comes to news articles. And so secretive Pentagon research program looks to replace human hackers with AI. It can't be too secretive if I'm seeing this all over the news. So,
on Yahoo News, mind you. Yahoo News.
That's Yahoo News, but you do a search on this exact time while all the news people are picking it up as well. Yeah. Fort Meade, I worked at a project out at Fort Meade. So the Air Force that's out there, these guys are crack nut cybersecurity guys. Absolutely. I mean, these guys are on it. I was impressed on a project that we did, several years ago.
So you've got some guys who are lurking in chat right now that are up in that organization. Appreciate you guys out there.
These guys are crack. I mean, it's funny when we started looking at the different entities, and I've worked on a lot of different programs with the DOE and the DOD and the DOJ. It's a lot of three-letter organizations they call it. And ironically enough, when we were, I think I was working with DIS out at Fort Meade on this one project, and they were supposed to be doing some stuff, and I can't go into too much detail, but it was always this interesting conversation between what DISA was doing and what I guess the Air Force wanted to do on their own. And I gave more credibility to the Air Force on that particular case because of what they were doing and how strong they were and their level of technical expertise. So do I get points here now for, I guess, pumping up the Air Force as far as this goes?
I was gonna say, can we get one of the producers to make sure Bill gets a repeat slot on the show in the future? Myself included, we have a lot of, I recognize a lot of the names in chat, and I know we've got a lot of Air Forcers in chat.
Yeah. So are we ready? Truthfully, we're never ready. I mean, I know that what they're doing is they're monitoring and they're watching how human beings react to these things. And what they want to do is they want to learn from the human beings so they can kind of figure out how to put this into the computers themselves so the computers can do the same sort of things and do it faster. I do think that there is a possibility that could happen. I do think there are algorithms and programs. But the funny thing is just like we are learning to try and look for patterns and look for, cause and effect and try to create programs around that. Somebody else is on the other side of the fence looking for random. And they're trying to go create something completely different on their side so that you can't necessarily guess the next step and what to go do next. And it becomes a battle of wits at that point in time. And I think I'd mentioned the first thing that came to my mind when I read this article was two computers ultimately that are playing chess against each other. And then instead of one trying to beat the other, what ends up happening is they both take a step back, have a conversation, get a beer together, and say, let's just go wipe out the human race and let's go have a beer.
Skynet.
I mean, Skynet, exactly.
Skynet. That's it. It's over.
I mean, so to me, I mean, can we do this? I think the human potential, and I think technology, just looking at where we've come over the last 5-10 years, where we're going to be in the next 5, 10, 20 years. I mean, I'm extremely optimistic. But the question becomes, can we and should we? Okay. The can we is I have every reason to believe that human potential can is unbounded. The should we is when we have things interjected into that program or when we have human interests or politics or anger issues or whatever it might be that are interjected into this, that's when I think that we corrupt the system itself. And that's where I get very squeamish about these kind of things in AI. AI has been overused over the last couple of years here, and the fact that everything's AI.
Everything is AI.
We're going to go ahead and put AI in everything.
Every piece of cybersecurity technology has AI in it.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's funny is we've written a program ourselves for monitoring kind of solutions, and we're looking for things in the solutions we've written where if you see this happen, then go and predict this. Well, that's not AI. That's predictive analysis in some cases, but it's not AI. It doesn't learn from itself per se. And that's where I think that we've tried to use buzzwords in marketing, and no.
So I like you have a very, very cynical approach to AI, and I think that it is incredibly overused and as soon as I saw this article, it lost 100% credibility with me just because it had AI in there. But it does look like the King Kim wants to poke the bear a little bit, and he says that, or he or she says, I see a more symbiotic future where AI enhances human hackers. #Neuralink. We've got an Elon Musk fan out there. Do you want to touch Neuralink? Do you want to touch AI?
I saw my first Neuralink YouTube video, and I was impressed. I'm sorry. I mean, what they're doing, I guess with the current, technology, and for those of you guys that know about Neuralink or don't know about Neuralink, it actually, I think it solves a major problem. I mean, the fact that you can actually attach something to your head, and right now, I can't think it looks like I don't know, I don't have anything here to show you, but it looks like this big old hunk of something on your head. But what Elon Musk has done is create this thing that's about the size of a quarter and about the width of maybe 4 or 5 quarters stacked on top of each other that attaches to your head. The same sort of thing with these little probes that go into your brain to stimulate, certain brain functions. And they're finding that it's helping, and I know that it's helping both the neural system itself. They're actually looking at hearing loss and trying to recoup hearing loss, and they're looking at eyesight and all. And so there's a lot of things. I think, again, going back to the human potential thing, I think that is awesome. That's not AI.
Mm-hmm.
That is us again learning more about the human brain to know which neurons to stimulate to exhibit a certain behavior. I'm just trying to figure out how everyone's brain is the same for them to be able to stimulate those things, in a predictive manner. They can do it on pigs, but I'm just wondering how the human brain, I thought our brains were kind of rewired differently or something. So maybe we are too much the same.
So it looks like heading over to chat a little bit. Looks like Shamu Khan wants to jump in on a dad joke. I've got an AI timer. I don't know what it's timing, but it does. There you go.
It's kind of like what do they say? What do Olympic sprinters eat before a race? Nothing. They fast. So again, bad dad joke.
I take that back. Let's take Bill off of future shows.
Yeah, I've got some good ones, but that's not one of them. What do they say that? All right, so one last one. Sorry.
Okay, here we go. We got this one.
What was the one that I think my daughter told me this one, so I have to say this one. It was I'll say this politely. I broke wind in an elevator, and that was so wrong on so many levels. I like that one.
Okay, all right. Unfortunately, I can't mute the guest chat, so I need to let's go chat. Let's get some more dad jokes going on in chat. Let's get some more dad jokes in chat. We got to counter these dad jokes with your dad jokes, okay?
That's like matter, antimatter. We got to go and clean this thing up some way.
That's right. If you write crap code slowly, it's just crap code. If you do it fast, it's machine learning. Wow, there's some cynicism right there.
Yeah.
Correlation.
There's only two feelings that people have when they write code and they see it the next day. You either look at it and go, wow, who wrote that? Or you look at it and go, wow, who wrote that?
Correlation rules in a sim equals AI?
Correlation rules.
That's a cynical statement.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
No?
Because correlation rules are predictive. I mean, you write a correlation rule.
So is that machine learning then?
Rules. Pardon me?
You think that's machine learning then?
No, I don't, because I think the correlation, if the correlation rule itself, and again, I guess you could talk about how correlation rules are written and what your definition of a correlation rule is. But in my field, a correlation rule is used to map identities across multiple systems, right? Well, we have to predict. We have to write the correlation rule itself. So it's not something that is auto-created in that case.
Got it. Go ahead.
You could.
Nope. Therson says, I wonder how smart pigs are going to be in the future. The tech is real. So I guess the real question there is, do you think pigs are going to take over the world?
No, I think that the cockroaches will take over the world because they're the only ones that can survive a nuclear blast.
All right. So heading back over to the news one. So since identity is your space, I did want to go out and check and see if there was any latest and greatest identity, news for us to talk about. And I saw this one. And for those who hear me talk on the show pretty frequently, I'm a huge fan of endpoint security and security awareness. We've done several topics on security awareness. We've even talked a little bit about it here in the stream tonight a little bit. And I'm also a huge fan of endpoint security. And I did find this that was pretty interesting about a study that was done in 2020. I'll ignore the fact that it was done by Hitachi, which is almost as dead as Oracle is. One of the things that this makes the case for, right, is that prioritizing IAM makes sense. Hackers don't break down the gate; they just unlock it, because they already have the keys. And I guess if I were to take a stance and be intentionally combative, just to kind of see where your stance is on this, Bill, isn't this a chicken and an egg problem? I mean, you credentials are always going to get leaked. They're always going to get disclosed. They're always going to get breached. And so, shouldn't we prioritize protecting the endpoint and making our users smarter over identity and access management?
So I think that in this particular article, and I've not read this particular article, but I can tell you why I believe that IAM itself is being prioritized over endpoint security is not necessarily from a security perspective. It's being prioritized from a marketing perspective, okay? As more and more companies are being forced to go off and implement what we call CIAM-based solutions, your consumer identity access management solutions, your CIOs are having to manage these projects that, quite frankly, need to incorporate, because they're being driven for revenue reasons by marketing or by whoever to know your customer kind of concepts. They're being driven into these projects, and there's a revenue aspect associated with this. We can always look at somebody else carrying the risk, and it's always going to be somebody else who gets hacked, not us. But so that's kind of we're reactionary at that point in time. But if I can implement IAM solutions for CIAM based, now I can reach out, I can increase revenue share, I can actually do better. So there's a carrot associated with this one. I think that's why in a lot of cases that your IAM solutions from that perspective are definitely trumping the actual security endpoints.
So it's interesting that you start with it being a marketing problem. Are we allowing marketing to drive cybersecurity strategy now?
No. So here's the problem with this is that there, and again, I've not read this particular article,
Sure,
but
sure.
IAM is a general, it fits multiple categories. All right. So just to be clear on this, there's your enterprise IAM, which what you're probably trying to go do is you're trying to go and onboard and your new employees or your vendor partners or whoever it might be. You're basically behind the firewall. And in that case, you start looking at the scope of those kind of projects. You have tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of users that might be involved in an enterprise identity and access management solution. And everything is controlled by and dictated by the organization. That's a good example of where you would need endpoint security, especially from our perspective, where we're trying to lock down the endpoints based on who in my organization needs to either get through or get access to those endpoints. In a SIAM-based solution, it's more customer-driven. In a SIAM-based solution, we're talking about identities in the order of maybe hundreds of thousands to millions to hundreds of millions of identities that need to be managed. And the scope of this and the way that we manage things and what we give access to and what we lock down to are very, very different between those solutions, even though they use the same technologies. And so that's why I'm saying that IAM or identity and access management solutions kind of have a hybrid definition, and it depends on who's doing the survey. In this case here, Hitachi ID, and I know them very well. We used to be a partner of Hitachi ID a long time ago. But I do believe that there's a lot of SIAM, which is driving more of our implementations today that's kind of probably leading this. Again, not knowing the facts of this particular article.
Now you bring in a new term there, and can you just kind of clarify just kind of where that new term, what that new term is, how did it come about, and where did that kind of, where did that divergence or where did that fork, if you will, from traditional IAM mentality, where did that kind of come from?
Okay, so if you think about I guess I did an article on this a long time ago about the growth of just authentication. Let's just talk about authentication, for instance. Once upon a time, we used to sit behind these dumb terminals, and we really had nothing there. We logged into a mainframe and did some work, remotely, and we time shared and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, we had these like TN3270 emulators that would sit on a desktop, and now we would have to connect into those to the servers remotely, and we'd have to log into them. And so now we moved some of the logic into our local desktop. Then we went around and turned back on the other side. We started looking at how do we centralize access management on some of these and put user credentials into a website, which acts as a front end to maybe some back end legacy system. And so we're putting our credentials stored in an Active Directory or an LDAP solution or a database or whatever, but they're tied to one website. And we do that 100 times because we're not smart enough to go ahead and use the same data store for all of them. And then the next thing is we move into what we call single sign-on. And within single sign-on in that case is how do we use one set of credentials to get access to all sorts of different applications, whether it's through federated technologies or even what we might want to call simple sign-on, which is basic auth against maybe a common data store. So we started looking at that progression over time, how we've grown over the years. Now, at every step of the way, you've had a provisioning process. You've had to have some way of getting users into those places so that they can actually get access to the thing that they get access to. And that's where in the old days, the only provisioning process we had where we used these X500 servers, these LDAP servers at the time. And the only way we could get them in was using command line tools or some Java or some web UI or something that interfaced directly into this thing. But we still had all these what we call pockets of data all over our enterprise that stored our identities. I think there was one guy, I read an article one time that he made a comment that he said, having multiple databases with multiple user profiles is like wearing multiple watches. You never really know what time it is.
Right.
And that was the same sort of thing here. And so how do we sync all this stuff up? How do we have basically, how do we use our time server, if you will, to go ahead and sync all these things up? And that's where user provisioning solutions came in, your IAM solutions, your identity solutions. And so in IAM, what our goal is we want to go ahead and create a central point to either synchronize data between two places or provide some UI or some REST interface or something, so that when we make a call to it, we update an object that now gets spread out to where it needs to go. So in an enterprise IAM solution, that typically starts with an employee filling out either a job application or something to that effect. It goes into HR. HR, now somebody sits there and types on a keyboard and puts it into some computer, and hopefully they spelled your name right. Otherwise, you have to go through inter-office mail to go ahead and get it corrected. From there, once they actually propagate through the system, somebody gives a phone call to a manager who has to approve or deny access to something. And someday they might get a phone and a desk and whatever. The average provisioning process to get somebody onboarded into a company used to be in the neighborhood of weeks. And if you've ever joined a large company, it could take months. They've got it down when you start using, I want to say provisioning systems, but we have to get into approvals and so forth down to a couple weeks. They try to get into what they call 0-day provisioning, where everything was done for you before you showed up. But that wasn't necessarily true, quite frankly, because there was always that thing we forgot. The key to the executive washroom. That was my number one requirement, right? And so those are I guess, behaviors of behind the firewall. We don't necessarily have to deal with it's end user self-service or registration. We don't do registrations in that because, quite frankly, HR takes care of that for us. That's enterprise IAM. It's in the enterprise. It's behind the firewall. What smart people started figuring out is that, hey, we can take this in front of the firewall. One of our customers had the bright idea to take 40 of their identity providers. They had 40 different credential databases with 40 different sets of profiles. The problem is they had 3,000 applications that use those 40 servers, basically. And the problem was those 3,000 applications, I could be a customer of many of those applications, and I would have to go in and update my profile on every single one of them.
Yep.
And so if I ever change my mobile telephone number, I'd have to go change it in however many places I did. So what we wanted to go do is kind of consolidate that into a common infrastructure at that point in time. So some common set of requirements. And so you had homegrown applications, you had some vendor product-based applications, you had Perl scripts and shell scripts, knitting things together from time to time. So you had all this stuff that was in there. What we found at that point was that the business value was not necessarily to consolidate the data down to one profile, and provide business value back to my client. Yeah, that may have made them happy. The true business value to our customer at that point in time was now they had 360 view of the customer, and they could look into and make predictions. 76% of customers that have access to this application, this other application, also have this other application. We see you don't have that other application. Would you like to sign up for it? Now it becomes marketing. Now there's a revenue stream tied to this. And so by consolidating identities, by having a common user experience for users that get onboarded into these applications, now it gives me intelligence. And now I can use that intelligence to raise my revenue at that point in time and make life easier for me. Another example that I'll give you, and then we can kind of go back onto another topic if you like, but another example is, you start interacting with, I guess, a company. You don't buy anything. You don't fill out a form. They don't know, basically for anything you're entering who you are, but they know exactly who you are. They start capturing things like your IP addresses. They start looking at what your operating system might look like, what JavaScript values you have out there. They're giving you some cookies so the next time you come back in, they're building a profile on you before you even know it. And that profile is getting stored into this database, and it has a name on there. Yep, exactly, fingerprinting. It has a name on there that basically says anonymous user number 1. Now, all of a sudden, you keep coming back, and over time, you sign up for that service. By this time, they've looked at every website or every web page you've looked at. They've noticed how long you might have stayed on that page. They might have known what you clicked on, what you tried for samples or whatever. And now they've built out a profile on you of what made you sign up for this account. Now, once you've signed up for the account, you decided to go and drop some money on Netflix. You're tired of the free movies that are out there. Now you're going to go get pay for a case. Once that happens, now what ends up happening is they associate your new credentials and the information you've chosen to share with them to your previous behavior. And now they continue tracking your behavior, and now they start offering you additional services. So there is no such thing as true privacy from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ever do sign up with them, they now truly can link you to something else. And now that's data intelligence for that entity. So this is what is driving consumer IAM solutions. SIAM
Gotcha.
is where that comes from. Because there's revenue tied to it. And when you have, your board of directors, sitting there going, hey, gee, if we start doing this, we can go ahead and increase our bottom line. Let's do this. And those are the projects that are getting improved a lot faster than those behind the firewall.
Gotcha.
Because we can piss off our employees, we can't piss off our customers.
Wow. I guess that just depends on the company you are. I want to go back to a concept that you had though, right? Because I think when you talk about 3,000 apps and you talk about 40 different kind of identity databases, if you will, and Pawn Muncher, I always mess up that name. Pawn Muncher mentions, makes a very good point, right? That's a lot of surface area on there. Isn't it a pipe dream to think that we're going to get to a singular identity database, one identity database to service them all?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So back in the old days when I was doing identity in the beginning, we had the concept of something called a meta directory. Now, a meta directory was a consolidation of all the directory services from other directories into one place. Out of the many years, and I taught classes, I do a lot of teaching on this, hence the Iem Practitioner Program. But in the very beginning, we used to teach classes about how you can consolidate. We had an entire methodology how you can consolidate directories down into a common directory server. And you know what? You could. But the return on that investment to go do it is not there. There's only one company that I saw successfully do this, or one organization that I saw successfully do this in the years that I worked in this space, and that was actually Daimler Chrysler. When you had Mercedes-Benz and Chrysler come together, they actually did merge everything together. There was so much pain and gnashing of teeth that went through this thing, but they got it done and it worked just in time for them to separate. So there you go.
Were they better off after they got everything together, or was it too much work for the benefit?
For some period of time, absolutely. Because when you have a single footprint, if you can, and this is where it gets a little bit tougher, because when you get down to a single footprint, it makes for applications a lot easier because now you have a common schema that your applications can code against. But then, gosh darn it, this new application came in, I got to go modify my schema. And so you have to put those changes before the schema review board. And it has to be vetted to see if it could be used in other properties and so forth. And so there was a lot of overhead associated with it. And that's why I said I've only seen one company that has done that successfully. The other side of the fence is the concept of the virtual directory. And the virtual directory is the ability to go ahead and propagate either just in time or synchronization wise, propagating the data, ahead of time. And that's what provisioning solutions can do for you in a lot of ways. I do not think we're ever going to get into a common identity. One of our hopefully soon to be clients that I'm talking to right now, he said something I think in terms of virtual directories, but he said something I thought was extremely cool, and I'm going to definitely steal this for myself. He says he wants to build an identity database without the data.
Okay. Tell me more.
What that basically means is he wants to go put together a database that has no data. Instead, it's a broker or it's some sort of conduit, because when you start trying to pull together, there's technology of this stuff is easy. Absolutely easy. We can do this. It's the politics that is where it really comes down. If you try to go into a university, and each university has their own little mini data center, they don't want to give up that control. They don't want to go ahead and defer off to a central data center. And it's the same thing with the federal government or state and local governments. When you have so many different entities and different government, they are so used to controlling their own data and their own destiny. And in fact, their budgets are based on them having to have this. Now, if you try to centralize this, it becomes extremely, problematic. So I think politics and control comes in at a very, hard level. So I truly don't think you're ever going to get to one common identity provider across the board.
So it's funny you mentioned that broker, because I see chat blowing up talking about Muncher made a comment about blockchain. Says you mean blockchain isn't going to fix it, but then they talk about Iem chains and AI powered Iem chains and things like that. Does this sound like a blockchain conversation?
I think blockchain does have some opportunities in this space, especially if we can start using blockchain for things like identity proofing, or it's not, I don't want to say identity proofing, identity vetting. So one of the things in my previous life I was trying to come up with is what I call a trust factor. And the trust factor, when you start working on websites that are out there, you don't necessarily know who you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now, Neil, I can see you. And what's weird is our human brain tricks ourselves to looking at somebody, even if it's on a computer, and having a certain level of trust just because we can see them. In person, if I shook your hand in person, which we can't because of COVID right now, but if I was shaking your hand in person, then that would give me another layer of trust. But it's hard to do that when you're doing these transactions that are online that you do not see and you do not know who this person is. And so how do you do secure payments, or how do you choose to rent out your Airbnb, or how do you choose to sell something to somebody on eBay or something if you don't have some level of trust? So I think what we were trying to go do is come up with a trust factor behind this, and there's a lot of guys in this space that are working on this, but they've kind of shifted a lot of this over to blockchain, quite frankly. Because if you can add an entry in your ledger that basically says, I vetted this and I verified this, and it gets part of my ledger, then that's part of that verification process. So I do think that blockchain identities are going to be doing a couple things. They're going to give us the ability for us to be able to maintain our own identity, but they're also going to give us the ability to have other people vet and confirm, things that we say about ourselves or things that they want to say about us. Where I think blockchain is going to come into, issues, and I've seen this already, is in some of the transactions that are included in the ledger. We don't want to expose too much information out there. And so you have to have ways of keeping some of that information safe and secure that only certain people, and that's where your self-sovereign kind of capabilities come in, where you choose who gets access to what data, and you choose who you choose to share it with.
Well, but I think Edward Malice in chat brings up a point that I think is valid, or at least it passes the sanity check on my side that I want to run past you as well. When we talk about using blockchain, don't we have a regulatory compliance issue? And he makes a very good point, right? You can't exactly SOX audit every node in the block, or when you're going to do that. So do we have a problem where the auditing functions that exist out there aren't mature enough for the technology to innovate into using blockchain for IAM?
Yeah, I do think that is a problem. But again, so keep in mind that a blockchain identity is no different than any other identity. Whether it's that I'm using that as part of my verification process or credentialing process, or I'm using this, or I'm using possibly, I don't know, I've got so many different things inside of my desk here for things I can log in with. But ultimately, it gets down to one thing. What is it you're trying to secure, and what is the risk if it gets compromised in some way? And so I may be perfectly fine accessing some content either anonymously or with basic auth. But as soon as I want to go do something that's transaction based, maybe I want to go ahead and do a transaction where I'm transferring $9,999 to this other person. Well, it's going to identify me again through some other means. And so, I put that $9,999 on purpose because 10,000 is that magical number we have to deal with that all of a sudden now takes on multiple levels of scrutiny.
Right.
If you're in the financial space.
Right.
So it really comes down to your identity and the way you're protecting your identity and the credentials you use and all of these things that kind of come into what your identity truly is. really need to be fit for the purpose of what it is you're trying to use it for. I would not use basic auth to log into the DoD. Never going to happen.
Can
You
we
have to
just
have a
not use
cat card
can
for
we
that.
just not use basic auth for anything? That would make most of us really happy.
I'm good with that, and we're close. We're very close in this. There's solutions out there. They just have to be widely accepted. And have you guys heard of the original? Is what I call back the beginning program that started us on our way. The National Strategy for Trusted Identities in Cyberspace.
I've never heard of that.
That was a huge partnership between the government, so commercial, the public, and the private sector, to come up with a death to passwords. Is what it really came down to.
Yeah.
And
I have heard that concept. I've heard a lot of people talking about we should be moving to a passwordless environment.
And we're closer now than ever. And I think in a lot of ways we're there. It's just that
How
trying
so?
to get adoption is the hard part. Because keep in mind, identity management in and of itself, or access management, they are not applications. Well, yeah, those are enablers. You build applications on top of these things, on top of what they produce. They're the plumbing. They're not, it's kind of like you have you have the marketing aspect of it, and then you have the under the covers kind of thing. It's like the back lot at Disney. You see all what goes on behind the back lot, but the magic happens outside. The application is the magic. Identity and access management is the back lot at Disney, is what it is. You don't see what goes on behind there. You like the user experience. That's what it really is.
So is it then we can't get the user experience to change to a passwordless mentality? Is that what's holding us back from utilizing the capabilities of an IAM system back end to move us to a passwordless, type of society?
No, I think it's the fact that we have so many places that things have to change. Adoption is going to be slow. So you're going to start seeing passwordless type, relationships with different sites, probably at the large, like the digital citizenship. You'll probably see it in a lot of government spaces before you see it anywhere else. Then you're going to start seeing it with those places that are trying to, how should I say it, differentiate themselves. But it's going to be happening at one application or one company at a time, is what it comes into. So the adoption, and again, trying to get everyone to agree, do we use FIDO? Do we, whatever it is we're going to use,
right.
In general, to get everybody to go use these same technologies or to come to a common methodology or a common standard, we're not there yet. And that's what I'm saying. I think the technologies are there. I don't think the adoption's there, because what ends up happening is we just don't have the people that are working on it or people that have accepted it yet.
I guess I get back to, I guess I look at it from you call it adoption, and maybe it is still adoption, but I think the SOX comment about blockchain is kind of very much where I'm going with this. Is something like PCI regulation says, do you have passwords? And so you can't it's a chicken and an egg problem. I go back to the same chicken and egg conversation we had with endpoint security versus versus IAM strategy, right? Which is you have to get a CISO, right, who's going to do a level 1 ROC or report on compliance for PCI and say, sorry, PCI Council, we don't have any passwords at all on our PCI environment because we've decided to move into the 21st century, or we've decided to mature our authentication mechanisms where we have a passwordless environment, and so therefore, no, we're not going to meet that control. And my skepticism in this comes in the sense that I don't think you're going to be able to convince a regulatory body like the PCI Council that your mitigating technology allows you to go passwordless.
So I can't answer for the PCI Council in this case, but they will have to change. We are moving passwordless. The amount of money that is being spent or lost, however you want to look at this, by using passwords every year, the amount that is, tied to identity theft, because of the fact that, grandma can't remember her password, or little Jimmy wrote it down on his computer with a sticky note and he just happens to have access to his mom's computer. Whatever it is, we've got to move away from passwords. We have to. So the regulations are going to have to keep up with it. Now, they may not be there yet, but they're going to have to change. And unfortunately, again, I can't affect the change in certain things like that, but it's going to come down into you're going to have those battles, and they are going to start coming where you have somebody that is more secure. I mean, look at it right now. If you look at some of the recommendations coming down from the government. I mean, passwords, they say don't ever use passwords. Use passphrases.
Yeah.
So that's a lot more secure than single passwords. And so I have to remember, the quick brown dog jumped over the lazy fox. Okay, there we go.
Three exclamation points and a number, because otherwise it doesn't match.
Yeah, fox 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
But I mean, coming up with those types of even those are difficult. So we have to get away from it in some way. Now, I'm not a big biometric fan, only because, you get locked out from biometrics, or something, you're truly locked out at that point in time. So, but yeah, I think we have to get away from it. There are some things there. I think truly right now, where a lot of the answers we're seeing are really around mobile, because, I wake up, I go to bed, I have this next to me, no matter where I am. And it's become a part of me. And I think you had mentioned, somebody was talking about, basically the brain interface. I look at it almost like, I'll take it back a little bit further, the Matrix. Plugging in a jack into the back of your neck, I know Kung Fu. And so I see that relationship, unfortunately, some hybrid. I'm not a fan of that, but I do see that we're going to have something that we wear, we carry, or something like this. And I'm perfectly fine with this. I don't want anything inserted under my skin anywhere, but I'm perfectly fine with this at this point in time.
How do you see the evolution of identity change I know we've done a ton of adoption, especially during COVID, into the mobile space. Do you think identity as an industry has evolved or matured, or has it already been poised to accommodate a more mobile workforce? And what are some of the challenges that are impacted in the identity space by having everybody more mobile?
I think that the mobile workforce identity has been able to morph, because now we can tie a device fingerprint to our identity. So now it's the what you have, it's the what you know. And even there's an application on here, if I want to go in with RSA or Okta or Google Auth or whatever, I have my application on here. So it's another layer. And so I think there's, if you look at GMSA standards and the levels of assurance that you have, the levels of certainty that you are who you are, because that's ultimately what we're trying to get down into, if we know who you are. And just by being on the mobile provider's network gives some level of certainty. And it's not really certain, because my daughter could be using my phone. But then you start getting into face authentication or thumbprint authentication on the phone. Well, now that goes another level inside of there, that this only proves your identity because we've logged in using some biometric. And then, so there's different levels that you have of assurance for people to be able to prove their identity. So I think mobile is our identity in the mobile space has become extremely well intertwined. And in fact, I've seen that the explosion of growth around identity and access management is really because of three things. It's because of mobile applications, it's because of cloud-based services, and smart devices in general. We have to be able to secure, you're talking about the endpoints. Well, think about my Philips Hue bulbs that I have to have inside there that are connected to my network, or my whatever it might be, all the image cameras that are monitoring out there that everyone forgot to change the default IP address, the default credentials on, right? So it's all those types of devices that are driving as everything's connected to the network. I think when we were talking about this before, when we started looking at how many identities there are in this world today, just human beings, I think we're at 7.8 billion people in the world.
Yeah, something like
that. About 59% of those are actually connected to the internet. 41% are not. So you do the math, whatever 59%, I think it's like 4 point something. but 59% are connected to the internet.
Chat can do those numbers for us. Chat can figure that out.
Those are your carbon-based identities. But what about your silicon-based identities? There's actually roughly about 50 billion of these things connected to the internet today, or to the networks today. And they're looking at that growing, of course, over the years. And I think they say that the average number of identities that are connected, or the average number of devices that are connected per household, is right around 6 or 7, I think, in that general area. They're looking at within 10 years, by 2030, they're looking at being like 15 devices. So if we're jumping or doubling the number of devices, we just now went to 100 billion devices on the network. Every one of those is an identity, and every one of those has a relationship.
Wow.
It has me, and it has this, and there's a relationship between me and this that establishes context. And there's a whole nother term that we can talk about some other time called identity relationship management. How do you manage the relationships of these devices or these people or whatever it is together? So yeah, I mean, I think mobile is definitely, mobile fit into the identity and access management space very nicely, because it's actually replaced a lot of the hard tokens we've had to carry in our pockets with mobile, which causes all sorts of fun time when you try to go into a government secured facility that has you have a phone that's a camera on it.
You can't even go in there with your Apple Watch these days.
Doesn't work. Can't do that. So anyway,
so let's head over to chat a little bit, because Muncher does bring up a good point, right? He says getting the board to use two-factor authentication is like pulling the teeth, and we're about 15 minutes at the top of the hour, and so I want to remind chat, make sure you get your questions in for Bill. I know everybody's excited for the giveaway, but let's also get the questions in. Here in the last 15 minutes, let's make sure we get those answered. But Muncher says getting the board to use two-factor authentication has been like pulling teeth, and I've been on that security pushing side as well, with multiple Fortune 100 companies trying to get them to use multi-factor authentication. If you're sitting in front of the board of directors right now, we're on this video conference talking to the board, how do you convince them, in an easy fashion, that passwordless is the right way to go?
Well, so multi-factor is one thing, and multi-factor doesn't necessarily mean passwordless. Remember, it's multiple factors, and one of the factors can be a password. So if I'm sitting in front of the board, trying to convince them of multi-factor, unfortunately, there's a cost associated with that also. And there's typically a distribution cost, whether it's the application that I need to distribute to my end users, or it's a physical token I need to extend, and so forth. Once you get past that, it's a breeze, and the cost actually comes down quite a bit once you got past that. But when you start looking at passwordless, if you can get to some sort of passwordless type scenario, and it actually works, okay, so we can start looking at some of the technologies that kind of go behind this, but it actually works, then you can truly cut down on the number of password resets you have to perform on a help desk. I know that some of that is old school, where we have self-service password reset, don't we, Bill? You do, but what happens if you lock yourself out of your Windows desktop, your laptop, because you're working at home because of COVID? You still have to call up some help desk somewhere. The odds are they haven't put a nice kiosk for you to get access to from your house. And so
most executives would ask for that, though, if they knew it existed.
I'm sorry?
Most executives would ask for that if they knew it existed.
Yeah, because I want it to be secure for everyone but me, right? So let's make the password policy 256 character passwords, no vowels. Must have 25 special characters. We must change it every 8 hours, but not me. So we're very secure, right?
Right.
So to answer your question is to convince them of passwordless. The hard part is, number one, there is a cost savings associated with it. So I can tell you from a purely logical standpoint, but boards don't think logically. They think financially. And so you have to put an ROI on this to ultimately show it, whether it's an ROI on the cost you're going to spend, or it's going to be, how much revenue can we increase by doing this? And what we are finding in the SIAM-based space, the least amount of friction you can give to a customer, the more stickiness you have with that customer. They're going to work with you more often. So you want to make that customer experience as easy as possible, so that they're not going to go to your competitor.
Okay. So Security Guru guys got a straight up question for you.
Sure.
Good to see you. 42. Done. There you go, security. You're good.
Good.
In your experience, how good are broker systems like Thycotic's Secret Server, which forces admins to check out and check in credentials and changes the password after each use? It sounds awesome, but is it actually a tenable solution?
I'm not familiar with that particular solution.
I think it's probably like CyberArk, isn't it? I'd probably the way that question's read with check in and check out, I'd probably replace Thiotic with CyberArk or some other type of PAM solution.
Yeah, so I think we had a similar type of issue where we had one telco company that had, I want to say, probably about 4,000 different routers, and they had to change the password on those routers every 30 days. So there was actually two guys on staff that did nothing but changing passwords on routers.
Jeez.
That was their job, to change passwords on routers. And so we built a similar type solution for them, but the way that we did it was not something where you had to check in and check it out. I think the checking in and checking it out, you're right, it does sound kind of cool. But to me, I would almost rather, in the cases where we want to actually put a password on there, why can't we just go ahead and lock it down by an anonymous in some case, or some sort of random at that point, and only change it when you have to. Okay, so go through a reset process, or take the credentials and store them in somewhere, on randomly generated, but let nobody know about them. So this was something that we did use an identity management solution from Sun Micro, but it worked great. In the case of having some secure vault type thing to check it in, check it out, I absolutely am a big advocate of secure vaults. In this particular case, like I said, I'm not familiar with this particular product or similar products like this, but having a place to go retrieve passwords from, so that we can meet our objectives. And basically, if we have a password policy that forces us to change service account passwords, or things break, then I have to have a way for the applications that use those server accounts to go in and return the passwords. So whether it's on startup or whatever, we have to find a way to get those.
So the password rotation thing you talk about, and Edward Mouse brings it up in chat, right? Is it sounds something like LAPS. So it sounds, LAPS, is one of those where you can randomize the local admin password.
It was a LAPS model. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So you've seen a LAPS model for something like routers in an enterprise environment or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we did is we used a LAPS kind of concept and built a user provisioning solution against it.
Oh wow.
So you can kind of SSH into these routers,
Mm-hmm.
and you can make some changes and you can get back out. So the nice thing is that you as a human being do not need to know what that password is until you do. If we have to send out a service tech that actually has to go work on that router because something's going wrong on it, then what you can do is you can either kind of check out the password to some degree, or in this case, we can go change it just in time on that target system, because we're not using his password to change it. We're using the service account password to go change it. So we could go change that password on the fly, and then he shows up, does his work, and then we go and change and randomize it again.
Interesting. Okay. I actually, that's actually pretty cool, because I did run into LAPS on a pen test, and I actually thought that was the first time I'd ran into it, like several years ago, and I thought that was pretty awesome. Pawn Muncher has got a very, very critical question for you, Bill. He wants to know if you play guitar.
No, I saw the chat inside of there. Rockmon is the application I was telling you guys about before, where we actually have built a product that does monitoring of identity and access management solutions. And it looks at 4 different things. It looks at resource utilization. It looks at behaviors of the system. It looks at configuration data and logs. So it's kind of where New Relic meets Splunk meets I guess to some degree Tripwire, and so all these things we pulled together in one place, and then we have our own secret sauce on it. And the secret sauce is the deep knowledge of the identity and access management solutions that we work with, where we can look at, are we going to go and how should I say it? If you go make a configuration change where you set your debug logs to verbose, I can pretty much tell you when you're going to run out of disk space. Okay, and it's going to be sooner rather than later. Or if you enable insecure cookies in an access management solution. So that's kind of what Rockmon is. In that case, Rock comes from one of our vendor partners we work with, which is Forge Rock. And Mon is a monitoring type solution, so it's Rockmon. That's their version of it for their product.
Gotcha.
So no, I don't play the guitar. That's my long-winded way of saying no.
I'd never heard of that either. So Graham wants to know, what are your thoughts on companies allowing LastPass-like products to be used by their employees for company accounts?
Oh, that's a really good one because I use LastPass. I love LastPass. However, there's other competitors to LastPass. We used to do single sign-on the desktop using, you guys do it to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
There's Active Identity. There's, Novell Secure Login. There was, I forget the other one, Secure or something that Oracle bought. There's all these desktop single sign-ons, and that's kind of where they're just credential capture applications so that we can replay them at some point in time. And so that's really, we've moved that away from the desktop and moved it into the mobile phone and into the plugins. And so I am a big fan of those technologies. My concern is you have to make sure, just like you're protecting your mobile apps and your desktops, you have to make sure that you don't have data leakage either. So it is possible to share things with other people. And so to me, my daughter can take some of my passwords I've given to her, and she can share them, elsewhere, because now that she knows them, she can see them, she can do something with them. So you have to lock them down. You have to make sure that you're doing the right thing. But I'm fine with it, and LastPass is something I do use personally. So if you guys know any hacks for LastPass, don't start looking to try and get around some of my stuff.
That's what they're talking about in chat right now. Volter says, Therson says, wasn't there a LastPass compromise recently? And I think it was the browser plugin as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll share, I guess, a personal experience. Hackers are getting so much better. Oh my God, they're getting so much better. It used to be the generic Viagra email you would get, or the I love you virus email, or something out there that, the guy from, the Nigerian prince is going to go ahead and give you all this money and all this kind of stuff. But, with all the data breaches we've had over the last few years, they've started putting together profiles on us that are so sweet. The emails that are coming to us are so elegant and personalized. It's no longer, hello, first name. It's now, dude, you're this. I just checked your bank account and this, and some of them you have to take a second look at, we have got to get to a point where I know we're never going to get rid of hackers, right? Because they're good, quite frankly, and we're doing bad all the time, but we have to keep putting the roadblocks in there, and I think passwords are one of the areas we've got to do something about.
Well, and I think that's why it's interesting when we talk about moving to a passwordless environment, because Verizon data breach report, when you phishing emails, when you look at the way in for when you look at the rise of ransomware that we see, where a lot of these guys are coming in through remote desktop protocol because they're guessing passwords onto RDP connections or Citrix environments and things like that. I think I had a CISO tell me probably 5 years ago that he believed that we would see a day with no passwords whatsoever, and to this day, that's probably one of the things that I think, I don't think I'll ever see in my career, sort of thing. I'm so skeptical on him.
See, and I'm optimistic on that one. I think we're going to see it probably in the next 5 years.
So, important question from Security Guru Guy. He says, since we're scrutinizing his Zoom room, how much are you ransoming Mr. Bill for, you monster? Do you got
So it's funny, is I just got that from Amazon just not too long ago. And so if you see out there,
what's Mr. Bill?
Here, right? But do you see the other bill there?
What other bill?
Come on.
Oh, look at there.
This goes back to, I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill.
That's right. God, what was that? What was the name? What was the name of that show? Schoolhouse Rock. Schoolhouse Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock. Thank you.
Yep. I got you. Schoolhouse Rock.
So those are my things. And by the way, so while we're sitting there scrutinizing, this is a badger. I actually got this because what was it? I helped build badges for a company, and so I said, what's better than having a badger with a badge? And they go, "That's great!" And they actually made these badges and sent them to me. So yeah,
We have gone from Dunkin Donuts to AI hackers to mental implants to bills and badges. I think that is an amazing opportunity for us to give away
absolutely.
your Iem Practitioner Program real quick. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have Bill monologue the practitioner program one more time, but we're going to open up chat. Literally anybody who is listening to the stream, we've got a lot of people listening to the stream right now. If you are interested in getting this scholarship, I mean, you've heard Bill for the last 2 hours, and Bill, I can't even begin to thank you. The amount of knowledge you have over identity and access management is phenomenal, and I can't even imagine if this is what you're able to give these people in 2 hours. I can't imagine what your program has got involved in, and so I'm even more jealous of what somebody's going to walk away here with this, and so I'm getting a. Oh no! Sorry. Look at there. I got everybody hyped up. I got my producer telling me that there's another question in chat real quick. Orlock Tanks says, Bill, thanks for being here. Great stream. What can the people who don't win the giveaway do to sign up for the cybersecurity pass? I expect to pay for it, so cost, any prereqs, how will signing up for... Also, sorry, this is the closed beta. So Orlock Tanks, are you talking about the closed beta, or are you talking about the Iem Practitioner Program? Because that's two different ones. So if you want to, Bill, why don't you talk about the Iem Practitioner Program? Orlock Tanks, if you're talking about the closed beta for the cybersecurity pass for INE training, send a DM to Carmen Mod and she can fill you in on what the cyber pass is. But I'll let Bill talk about the IM Practitioner Program. For everybody who's interested in the IM Practitioner Program, the code for today's giveaway, and I'm putting it in chat right now just to make sure that I get it right, because we know how Nightbot is. That is the code for today's giveaway. So everybody who is interested in, Bill's about to explain his identity, his IAM practitioner program, that is the code for today's giveaway. Make sure you smash it into chat right now. Bill, can you go ahead and give us a recap of your practitioner program?
Sure. So I'm surprised anybody is interested in it at all after hearing me speak for 2 hours. Be afraid. Be very afraid, actually. So so the practitioner program, once again, there is a huge gap in the cybersecurity space, and we can't fill the entire gap, quite frankly. But I can do the part in the area that I think that we do the best job in. We do a lot of corporate training for a lot of vendors. We've written a lot of the IAM, courseware for the old days, Sun Microsystems, for Oracle, for ForgeRock, and so what we've done is we decided to go ahead and build things that were, how shall I say it, more practice-based. Vendor training teaches you how to install something, how to administer something, how to tune something, and so forth. And you might get some best practices out of it. What we've decided to go do, and because we're looking for talent, we want to hire people to work in this space, but they have to be the right people, because I can't put them on a customer project for we're working with Fortune 100 companies if you don't know your stuff. And so we've had to fight for the same people that those same Fortune 100 companies are looking for. And so we've built what I like to call the machine. And the machine in this case here is nothing more than a training program to take you from start to finish. You end up with a certification at the end of this thing. You start off by taking a test at the very beginning to know if you know your stuff to be in the class. So there is an entrance exam to get into. You do need to know Linux, and you need to know some web topics and protocols to some degree. But if you don't pass it, then we kind of tell you what you didn't get right, and you can go and prep for it again, and so forth. So we want to go into the very beginning of this to at least make sure that you're not going to drag down those that are capable. Gee, that came out really bad.
You're supposed to be enticing people towards this, not pushing them away.
That's right. I know. They're like going, oh, geez, this guy's an ass. So anyway. Wait a minute, I saw there The Princess Bride. I love it. One of my favorite movies. So anyway, so we do want to know if you have the basic skills. Now, the first thing you get into is we start teaching you the introduction to identity and access management. And so you learn about what is identity management, what is access management, what's the core foundation, what are the acronyms, what are the terms, just to be buzzword compliant. And then we move into beyond that, we go into some of the introductory around some of the vendor products we have in there. So we do use vendor products in that class because I want you to have a class project that runs 12 weeks. I want you to start and I want you to go ahead and build and continue to grow. So at the end of this thing, you have a working proof of concept. And so we take you in and give you some intros to some of the vendor products. Then we teach you deployment methodology. We teach you best practices, use cases, all this stuff in 12 weeks. And it's a combination of both nighttime classes and daytime classes. And so there's, I think, 3 or 4 weeks in there, 3 weeks, I think, that are 5 days all day. So it's like 9 to 5 for 3 of those. And the rest of them are nighttime classes because we know that people have jobs and they can't take all that time off. And so we move through that. And at the end of this thing, we give you a class that basically helps prep you to go get a certification in identity and access management from the vendor products you use in that case. And so what that does for you is it gives you not only actionable skills, but a shingle you can hang on your wall, your desk, or your LinkedIn profile that says, I know my stuff. And so it covers the cost of the exam and all that fun stuff. But we also work with different companies to get you an actual internship after that 12-week program is over. And so what the internship does is we have companies that want the people that are graduating this because they're looking for the same skills we are. But just between you and me, I'm looking for them before they do. Okay, because you're in my class or in our classes. So long story short is we're going to have people that can actually go work for different companies. And so we actually help find people for our customers. And so you can have an actionable a job in the cybersecurity space focused on identity and access management after this. That's what the practitioner program is. It's a 16-week program, 12 weeks of classes, 12 weeks of a lab that goes across the whole thing, and a 4-week internship, and then certification exam at the end.
I'm excited for this. Like, I don't know how anybody else is not excited for this. This is amazing. So if you heard that, if you were skeptical about whether to put yourself into it, one last chance, hit that exclamation point, identity, to get entered into this. Everybody get their bits chaired. This is going to be, we've got tons of people who are so interested in this. We're about to hit this roll for Nightbot. So everybody do the pseudo drum roll on their desk. Let's see who wins this. We're going to hit the roll in 3, 2, 1. Graham has won the giveaway. Graham, please send your information to Carmen Mod. You'll see her. You've seen her chat in chat. Congratulations, sir, ma'am. Good job. Send your information over to Carmen Mod, and she'll get that, and we'll pass that over to Bill.
And if there's anybody else who is interested in the program, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. It's not cheap. But if we can find a sponsor for you in some way, or if you're working for somebody now and you want them to sponsor it, there's lots of options out there. But it also depends on the next class, how many people we have in the class. We might be able to give away more scholarships. We'll see. But it's not cheap. I mean, we're talking, in some cases, close to $20,000 for the whole thing for a 16-week program. So you're graduating with, it's basically paying for a job is what you're doing. So we don't keep the majority of that money. It goes back into the program itself. So it's pretty good. I think it is. So it's up to you guys, but definitely this was a large, giveaway tonight. So if there's anybody else that is interested, reach out. You find me on LinkedIn or something. Just let me know that you were on this and you saw me speak or something, and then we can kind of talk and we'll go from there.
We will get. Can I get one of the mods to find Bill on LinkedIn while I close this out and post it into chat. Bill, thank you so very much. I'm sure I can speak for every single one of our viewers tonight that you crushed it. You killed it. This was an amazing stream. This is the most fun I've had talking about identity I want to turn it over to you. The floor is yours. You got anything else you want to say or anything else you want to add?
No, just, I guess it helps when you have, I don't know, liquor in here instead of soda. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So the one thing that I think I mentioned inside of here that identity is an enabler. To be honest with you, I never thought that was the case. I mean, I really didn't, because when I got into the identity business, I told you before, I was dragged in kicking and screaming because nobody else would do it. But the fact of the matter is, in the 20 years I've been doing this, and it's 20 years in the identity access management space, probably in 5 years and other stuff out there, but in the 20 years I've been doing this, I've had the best time. Where else can you play Sherlock Holmes when you're doing implementations for customers? And I work with some of the best companies out there. And so it's kind of cool that we have a solution that not only, it's not like you have to go in and configure a router or a firewall or something like that, not to knock doing that, but it's kind of cool when you work in this space and you have to work with people in HR, people in the security group, people on the business side, people in marketing. I mean, you work with so many different people and you get so many different flavors behind this. And that to me is the cool thing behind it. I love my job. While I might run a company, I have a real difficult time getting out of the action because I love doing this. And so maybe it comes through in the voice, hopefully. But I mean, when I can go work with a customer and solve their problems and figure out the best way to go do something and use the technologies that are at hand, it's just awesome. I just love it. So
Absolutely.
Consider this. If you guys are looking, the identity access management space is huge. There's lots of vendors out there you can work with. You can build your own stuff. You could be the next Iem solution. You could go and do open source and take it and go and create and change the world. There's plenty of people that have done that. And so I highly, highly recommend it.
Awesome, Bill. I'm gonna close this out real quick. Hang out on Zoom real fast. When we get done, I'll come back over and chat with you here in a second.
All right, sounds good,
guys. I'm amazed at how many people showed up for tonight's stream. Thank you all so very much. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. I'm very, very excited to have Bill have come in and participated in the stream tonight. Thank everybody so much for being here. Remember to check us out every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Make sure you hit that follow button. Make sure you throw us a subscribe. Congrats to all the subscribers that got gifted subs tonight. I saw the DM, Carmen. We'll address that later. Thanks everybody. And we'll chat again on Saturday.